You're listening to the How to Talk to Girls podcast with your dating coach, Trip, from tripadvice.com. Do you struggle with getting girls to like you? Well, you're going to learn step-by-step how to talk to girls to create deep connections and meet the woman of your dreams. Here's your host, me, Trip. Hello and welcome to the How to Talk to Girls podcast. This is your host, Trip Kramer from tripadvice.com. Now, I was actually going to do a whole other episode today all about flaking. And the reason why I was going to come up with that idea for an episode is because we were talking about that in my group called Trip's Corner. It's a secret Facebook group that I have. If you know what it is, that means that you've invested in one of my programs and you have requested access to it. But if you're like, what's Trip's Corner? How come I've never seen this? How come I've never heard of this? That means that you don't have one or more of my programs like Hooked or Fearless Formula or anything else that I have, which is a few more. And if you don't have access to Trip's Corner and you want access, well, you got to be a member of one of the programs. So get to that. I suggest starting with Hooked. You can get access to Hooked at getherhooked.com and then join us at Trip's Corner. Anyway, I was on Trip's Corner, and what ended up happening was I was reading a little bit about flaking, and I was going to do a whole episode on that, but then I saw someone talk about how the fact that, well, let me just say this. I get this every day at Trip's Corner where they're like, I can't talk to girls. How do I say this? Or I have a hard time approaching, or I can't, go up to a girl and flirt with her, and I can't flirt. And it's funny because they ask all these questions, and I'm kind of confused, right? I sit here and I'm like, wait a minute. Why do they have questions? All of this information is in Hooked, or at least one or more of my programs, right? Very, very, rarely is there like a question that they have that's so specific. I'm like, okay, that's actually not covered in Hooked. That's covered in the online program, and that's maybe a little bit more covered in the Fearless Formula program. But usually if you have Hooked, all the major questions about dating girls and getting girls are answered in there. So what's going on? Well, I ask them, and sometimes I ask them like, hey, have you watched, the bonus? Have you watched this bonus called Effortless Flirting, which is all about conversation? Hey, have you watched the bonus called The Date Machine, which is all about how to do approaching? Have you watched this module on first dates, which is all about first dates? And they'll come back and they'll say something like, oh, no, I haven't watched that yet. And okay, well, that's fine. They didn't go through the whole program. Well, you got to do that, right? You got to go from the beginning to the end. But then once in a while, and a little far too often than I'd really like, someone says, yes, I did watch that. And I say, okay, well, what's the problem then? You have the information, the question's answered. What's preventing you from moving further? And then what ends up happening is they say something like this. I'm going to take an exact quote, but I'm not going to say who it's from to keep it anonymous. So someone said here, after learning Hooked, I do much better in approaching, but I would love to know more about how to bring the conversation to the emotional level. And then someone said, same here. It's not a problem for me to approach girls. I just need some sort of specific tutorial about spiking emotions. And then right there, I'm like, wait, spiking emotions, that's all in my Effortless Flirting program. So I say, have you watched Effortless Flirting? And then they responded back, yes, but it's not easy for me, maybe because of my lack of practical experience. Okay? So what they're saying there is that the information I'm giving them is not easy. And so a lot of guys have even commented, this is too advanced. And let me tell you something. Hooked is not advanced. And by the way, no, this is not a whole promotion for Hooked. This is really something you have to understand here. I'm getting to something very important, so just follow me here, okay? So I say to them, you haven't watched that, okay. And so the real problem here, is that it's not hard, okay? I have broken it down to the very basic, minimal level that you could ever try to put it down to. Trust me, I haven't seen anyone be able to explain it, how to meet girls or how to flirt or how to get to an emotional level in such a dumbed down way than I've brought it down to. I'm not saying that in a mean way, like, oh, I got to explain it to people who are dumb. No, I'm explaining it like you're explaining, anything you're trying to learn, right? If you're learning guitar, well, first you got to learn, what string is what note. Like the top string is E, and then the second string is A, and so on. So again, I'm just walking people through. And it's not that it's advanced. The problem is that I know that guys are not implementing the information. So this is very important to you, whether you have Hooked, you're in Trip's Corner, whether you listen to my podcast like you're listening right now, or you have watched any of my 450 videos that I have on YouTube, or you're watching other people's YouTubes, or you've invested in other programs, you're listening to other podcasts. None of this stuff is really as hard as it seems. The only reason why you think it's hard is because you haven't implemented yet. Okay, so think about that for a second. That's the big lesson on today's episode. The reason why it's probably hard for you is either one, you don't actually understand it, right? So that means the material is not good. But I've never had anyone say about Mommy Trail that they can't understand it, like it's too advanced where they don't get it and they got to watch it over and over again. Okay, so I know that's not the problem. So here, usually the problem is that you are not trying it out and implementing it. A lot of guys think that they have to nail it. They have to, okay, first watch a video, listen to a podcast, understand it completely, and then it has to work right away. But that's not reality. Okay, so I'm giving you a little bit of a reality check here. That's not how this works. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Really, it's about listening, understanding the information, taking notes, studying it, getting it to a degree where you sort of understand it in your head and you can see it happening in real life. But then the next biggest part about it, the other 70% of this process, is going forward and putting this into action steps. So I think if you're an avid listener of the podcast, I've talked a lot about putting this stuff into practice, and I motivate you as much as I possibly can to use this stuff. I don't want you to just listen to the podcast. Trust me, as much as that would just benefit me for you to listen to the podcast and get all my programs and all that all day long, it doesn't help me, because what helps me is you actually getting the results from this stuff. That's what I want. That's why I've created this entire thing here, this Trip Advice. I've created this for you to get results. That's what I want from you. But in order to get those, you need to be putting this into practice, okay? And that's the reason why you don't have the girl that you want yet, is because you actually haven't taken the time to put this material into practice. And hopefully you're listening, you're like, oh, Chip, don't worry. I've done that before. Great, that means something's working. That's when guys come to me and they say, I got the results. So this is like practicing guitar. So the guy here who said, yes, but it's not easy for me, maybe because of my lack of practical experience, that's exactly what it is. It's because you haven't gone out there and done it. So that's okay. It's not supposed to be easy. I'm not supposed to hand you a guitar and have you start playing like you're a complete rock star, like you're John Mayer, right? No, that's not what's going to happen at all. You're not going to just watch a video or listen to a podcast or go into Trip's Corner and you get some information that you use it, it's going to work. Sometimes it does, and that's just kind of, luck of the draw there, is that you were able to implement it perfectly. But you are going to need to practice over and over and over to get this right. So all the information is out there for you, okay? Whether, again, you're investing into programs, you're getting coaching, you are listening to podcasts like this, like it's all out there. Like every question you can ever want on literally anything you want to learn about is out there. You want to learn how to make a mushroom risotto? I'll give you 50 ways how to do that online, because there's a bunch of recipes on how to do it. You want a new pickup line or an opener to talk to a girl? Well, go through my material. You'll get about 10 or 15 at the very least. Go through all of YouTube. You'll get about 100 or 100, what am I saying? Thousands, right? You're going to get thousands of examples, and you're going to see it done. You'll see the infield stuff that the pickup artists put out. You're going to see all of it, but none of it is going to do shit for you unless you go out and implement it. So that's really what I need to encourage you on this podcast, is enough is enough. If you haven't taken this out to the streets, if you haven't taken this on online dating, you haven't taken this out to the bars, you haven't taken this on your dates, if you haven't used any of this material, it's going to be hard. Yes, it is kind of hard. The implementation is hard. The material, super simple, right? I even get a lot of comments of people who say on my YouTube channel, I get comments from haters that say like, oh, this is common sense, oh, this is easy. Yeah, sure. Some of it might be common sense. Someone might kind of get it really quickly and say, oh, it's common sense. Well, I got two problems with it. One, if you've ever heard of this saying, it's common sense but not common practice. That's like all my stuff here. Okay, it might be common sense, but it's not common practice. People aren't doing it. Okay, but also, it's easy to say something is common sense when you watch it being explained so perfectly. But if you didn't come up with that solution on your own, then it's not common sense. I have a way that I explain things to the lowest common denominator that makes it so easy and simple for you that, yeah, it seems like a child could do it. You're like, oh, that's easy. Well, yeah, to the haters out there who think it's easy and common sense, why don't you come up with it first? And this is not a rant against the haters. This is just a way to tell you that, yes, information, easy. Implementation, hard. How do you get to a point where the implementation is easy? You go out there and you practice this stuff. If you have approach anxiety and that's tough for you, well, look at my videos on approach anxiety. I've had at least five episodes of my podcast about approach anxiety. I have a whole program called the Fearless Formula that helps you conquer approach anxiety. But again, the answers are out there. But eventually it's going to, get to the point where, the rubber meets the road and you are on your way and you're doing it and you're practicing it and you're making this happen. My practical advice for you today is to make this more of a habit for yourself. How do you make something a habit? We make something a habit by doing the same thing at the same time every single day for 30 to 90 days. That's how you make a habit. So I say, if you want to get better at this, for you out there, if you're listening, and I'll try to link you to the podcast episode, you who has in Tripp's Corner, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to take the information and then you're going to need to implement it every day. Why don't you do one approach every day where you practice the information that I gave you on how to flirt and bring conversation to an emotional level to make that connection between you and the girl? Why don't you do it every single day at 12 p.m. on your lunch break? Why don't you make it a habit every single day to do one or two approaches and practice one or two things from the programs, from the podcasts, from the videos, and from everything that you're learning? Because then I promise you, you will see results. It's inevitable because it is a numbers game, but every day is a numbers game. Malcolm Gladwell, famous author, said it takes 20,000 hours to become an expert at something. I'm sorry, that's actually 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours. Let's look that up right now online. 10,000 hours. Malcolm Gladwell. And yeah, 10,000 hours. It's a 10,000 hour rule. That is what it takes to be able to become an expert at something. Basically, that's just a fancy, specific way of saying shit takes time, right? And that's not just, kind of like sort of going out and doing it like once a week and like hopefully something happens and maybe something will happen if you go out and you kind of like do an approach and blah, blah, blah. No, we're talking about what he calls deliberate practice, right? That's how you become world class. Okay, by doing something deliberately and doing a lot of it and making it part of your routine. Okay, the reason why people are really good at what they're good at, if you ever see someone who's an amazing musician, who's just really smart at something, who's making a lot of money, okay, yeah, once in like 5 to 10 to 20 million people, does luck of the draw happen and you are able to win the lottery and get a lot of money, or, just stumble upon the right girl for you and it works out. But this is like lottery luck stuff that's not realistic. It's not reality. Your reality is not you winning some sort of lottery. It's about you putting in the hours to make it work, to make everything work to the way that you want it, to get what you want out of life. Where I'm at right now in my life, I'm very happy. And I know that everything that I'm happy about in my life today is all things that I had to work very hard at. But I'm glad I did it. The work was worth it. Putting in the work to go out and approach girls. Now I have an amazing girlfriend that I absolutely love, right? And on top of that, I have a business that I love. Well, what did I do? You know how long it took me to get to the point where I have thousands of you listening to this podcast? I don't say that to show off because there was a point when I had 2 people listening to it. But that was like 3-4 years ago when I first started. So imagine how long it took me to get to that point. A lot. It was a lot of work. So all I'm saying to you in this episode, all I'm trying to get to your thick skull is that you got to do the work and you got to put it in. How do you do that? Habit. How do you do that? Every day, doing the same thing over and over again. How do you get good at that? Well, make sure that you're learning the right information. So you're going through the programs and implementing something. And then how do you make sure all of that works? Well, you make sure that you're taking notes and you understand that whatever you're doing every day, you're getting better at it and better and better at it. That's what the habit is for, to get better at something. Depending on what it is, right? If you want a habit of drinking a glass of water before bed every night, you don't have to get good at that, but you have to do it continuously. But let me tell you that if you do an actual skill and make that into a habit, you will get better at it because you're going to be progressing. But it's got to be deliberate. It's got to be on purpose. It's got to be something that you're conscious of and you're working on, you're putting effort toward. Okay? All right, that is my rant for this week on the How to Talk to Girls podcast. Hope that helped. Anything I talk about here on the podcast that I've referenced, any links to any programs, I'm going to put that in the episode description so you can get your hands on that, and hopefully I'll get to see you in Tripp's Corner. Talk to you soon.